In today's episode, we're here talking with Tressa Knutson Bruggink, who is our Director of Global Internal Communications and Employee Engagement here at Rockwell Automation.
You'll learn about how brand, customer experience, and employee experience are interrelated and what the company is doing to make all of those better.
Well, good. Okay, so to kick off this episode, I want to ask each of you to say who you are, what you do, how long you've been with the company, and maybe what you enjoy most about your jobs. And so I think what we should do is start out with our special guest, Tressa. If you can just give us a little bit of information about you.
Yeah, great. Hi, I'm Tressa Knutson Bruggink. I lead our internal communications and engagement team, so which is a global team, and we do everything from the digital channels that our employees have, like EPOC and Yammer, but also then working with our leaders to have different all-employee meetings, leader messages, and even kicking off things like the In Good Company podcast. So kudos to Anthony for that.
Yes.
I've been here for 21 years, and I refuse to be acknowledged on any of the recognition slides because it just feels like that's a really long time. So, what else did you ask me?
What do you enjoy most about your job?
Oh, that it keeps changing. Like, we get to keep doing really awesome stuff. We get new people at the company all the time. We get to kind of push the boundaries a little bit. We get to kind of play in our jobs and work, and I just love that it's never the same.
Yeah. Actually, I think it'd be kind of funny if we talk a little bit about how we might know Tressa, just because there is some really funny stories here. But one of the things I'll just say is I've been here for 11 years, and majority of my career I spent working for Tressa. So it's been great, even though PADRs are going on right now, but you're not going to be doing mine,
anymore,
I don't think.
so you don't have to say that anymore.
Exactly. But no, I mean, it's been 11 years of knowing you and working with you, and so it's pretty cool. But and then, yeah, I mean, so anyway, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself,
Sure.
Sabrina, and then maybe talk.
Yeah, so Sabrina Ader, I'm a manager of our North American events team here at Rockwell. I've been here a year and a half, and we execute and plan everything from Automation Fair to Corporate Leaders Roundtable, the REOTM program, Business Alignment Meeting, and Partner Network Conference, as well as RA Tech Ed. So
That's
it. And there's other little things that pop in here and there, which we love to support ad hoc initiatives and efforts that are going on. Something like the Distributor Marketing Conference that's led by Sydney Zalazzo. We really love to partner with her and have a really great event for our partner marketers. What I love most is that diverse stakeholder audience. It's so fun, and it's helped me get up to speed at Rockwell, only being here a year and a half, so quickly, because I'm understanding the needs and the requests and how the business all connects with everything, and making sure that the message that we have at our events talks to all those different stakeholders. So it's been really great.
Yeah, I can see that, actually. I mean, obviously, I just sat in on a meeting with you and your team recently. So you meet with everyone
Yeah,
that covers,
fantastic.
different product lines, different initiatives, all that kind of stuff.
Right,
So that's, that's really cool.
It's really great.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. And how do you two know each other?
So Tressa and I know each other because I'm marrying her younger brother in September of this year. So we're very excited to become part of the Knutson family, and looking forward to that happening officially. But she's also marrying us, so she'll be getting ordained, and
How
we'll be
cool is
orchestrating
that?
the ceremony. So
That is so
really
cool.
excited. Yeah, it's taking place at the Pabst Best Place downtown, so it'll be beautiful and
Very
We're
cool.
excited.
Yeah.
And I helped to recruit you here.
Yes, that's even more important. Is that I used to work at Johnson Controls here downtown, and had been looking for a new challenge, and had been talking to Tressa for weeks, and she was trying to recruit me, and the time came right, and found an open spot that fit what I was looking for.
Cool.
Yeah.
I know, it's been great having you. so.
Yeah, I love being here. It's great.
We all love it.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
fun.
And Andrew, I've known you for a while now, but who are you? What do you do? How long you been here? What do you enjoy most?
I'm Andrew Astert. I manage our services business through the channel in North America. I'm the one person in the talk show today that doesn't have a close degree of separation from Tressa, although my wife does work at Johnson Controls. I've always looked up to the work you guys do, though, so I'm excited to be on the show. So when I say managed services through the channels in North America, we're extending a portion of our services business through our distributors so that they can improve our customers' experience as an extension of us. And I think that's the coolest thing I get to work on, is there's all these independent companies that are trying to evolve rapidly as digital and omni-channel service providers and ultimately provide a better customer experience. And us guiding that and also learning and evolving as a company as a result is just really, really cool.
Well, one thing I've really come to appreciate about you is that the first time we met was after the Catalyst Awards dinner, which is a big deal. It's an award that we received as a company about 2 years ago with all of our diversity and inclusion work. And Andrew was one of the leaders in our field organization who really, that you take the time to actually prioritize culture and employee experience and kind of what our people are doing and how that extends to our partners. So I think that's a huge kudos to you, but it's also like this is kind of becoming who we are. And so that was my first meeting with you, and like first impressions matter. So.
And I would say, I mean, that's spot on. I mean, from a personal brand perspective, that's why I know of you too. I met you, I don't remember what year it was. It was at an Automation Fair event. After event, I think I met you through Beth Parkinson, who's a great connector. So, but same thing, yeah. I've known you to be really focused on helping build that culture and some of the inclusion work and that sort of thing. So,
I've been lucky to follow the leadership of some key leaders in the field, like Michelle Morrissey and the folks that started Wi-Fi a long time ago, Kelly Ritchie and Sue Raymond. There was a core group, and they inspired the guys in the field to take a leadership role in serving as allies, and then parlaying that into the touch point that is our distributor. A lot of our people in the field spend more time with our partners and customers than Rockwell in earnest. So getting that culture change is really challenging, but probably the most rewarding and fun part of the job.
Okay.
Well, one thing you mentioned was customer experience, and we're going to be talking a little bit about that today as it relates to our main topic, which is employee experience. And so, obviously, Tressa had introduced herself, but your whole world really revolves around building what would be an optimal employee experience. Obviously, when I reported to you, core part of my job was helping figure that out from a digital perspective, how we're communicating with our employees, the experiences they have, on our digital workplace, things like that. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. I think you guys have a lot of questions about it. We are very intrigued by the topic itself. When we put it out there on Yammer, had a whole bunch of likes and questions submitted and that sort of thing. So first question would be, what is employee experience? I had actually someone reach out to me separately through email, and they're like, "Oh, that's a new term I just learned." He speaks about user experience all the time, but customer or employee experience. So I know that a lot of people are interested in it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely it's a more emerging term, but not unlike customer experience. The way if you look at kind of the aggregate of a lot of the definitions. Employee experience is basically everything that touches an employee through their employee life cycle. It could be from the first minute you find out about a company and you start investigating whether or not you want to join, whether it's a recruiter that reaches out to you. But through each of those touch points, it's the processes, it's the tools, but more importantly, it's like the moments that you have as that employee moving through that life cycle from the first time you hear about a company to the time when you might exit that company. But hopefully, and in our case, what we're also trying to do is inspire brand advocates and people who, no matter what touch point you have with our company at whatever time, you can easily advocate for who we are and what we do. So when you think about kind of the evolution from employee satisfaction surveys, kind of like there used to be the customer satisfaction surveys, and then there's the evolution from the employee sat to kind of just employee engagement. So we have our Global Voices survey. So that's still really, really relevant, really, really important. That's critical research that we do to make sure that we understand and connect with what employees are experiencing today. But employee experience takes it that one step further because it truly is, how are people feeling? So we're going to talk a little bit about feelings today, but not in a mushy, squishy way. But I mean, this is really the emotional connection. I mean, there's brain research. So this is the emotional connection that people have and what they feel. It's really incredibly powerful. So how is it that we can do our best and kind of use some of the scientific principles to really understand what that can be, because you can create these really strong advocates who in turn do really great things for our customers. So yeah, we'll get into a lot more of it, but essentially it's that next evolution from employee sat to employee engagement to now what are all of those touch points? What are those moments that people experience?
What was the employee sat thing? I don't think I've heard that before.
No, I mean, it's just kind of is this the best place to work for? Do you feel good
sure.
working
Okay.
here? Would you recommend? And, so the research that really began in earnest was probably about 15 years ago on that side of things. But really, as I think business leaders started to realize that, hey, this is something more than just do employees like this, that employee engagement came along because that's really where are you driving outcomes? Where are you having those opportunities to kind of inspire people to want to do more and to really put that discretionary effort into their work, whether it's serving our customers, whether it's building out, what we can do to be more technically excellent, to have more just operational excellence. There's a lot of different things, but that's kind of, it went from just how happy are you working here to, how can we make this a place where we're really working together to drive those outcomes.
Tressa, there's a lot of dialogue around and visibility around employee engagement.
Yeah.
How does employee experience relate to or differ from engagement? And then I'm curious, long term, how do we measure this employee experience thing so we can improve on it?
Yeah, those are all things that we're talking about and kind of wrestling with right now because, I think I'm really lucky to actually have a lot of access and visibility to how much our leaders really do care about employee engagement. I mean, they take our Global Voices survey very, very seriously. Managers do the same thing. They're talking to their teams. But employee engagement is kind of the what. It's driving those outcomes. And then employee experience is the how. So it's kind of taking some of those values and some of the those moments to really inspire people or to get at what's really pissing them off or like get that out of their way, because we might find that through a survey, but chances are it just might be something that happens really, really quickly. So we're also looking at what are some of the tools or what are some of the ways we could measure that. But right now it's still really early, and this is really an emerging field. So it's kind of exciting because we're sort of in a place with, Blake being in his role for 3 years with a newly emerging leadership team that has changed its complexion really significantly over the last, 6 to 9 months. We're looking at what can we do to transform as a company. So with change comes a lot of opportunity.
Companies like LinkedIn and Glassdoor have kind of opened the visibility for employees, current and future, to see what your organization's EX, so employee experience, is all about. What's Rockwell doing to ensure that on those platforms we're very clear about what that means for us, but then also what are we doing internally to essentially combat the retention, like losing our employees? It's just so important. It's super competitive now. So what are we doing about that?
Yeah, that's actually that's part of what Anthony's team is chartered to do right now. We have a whole small but mighty talent brand team that's really focused on that and kind of taking what is our company's brand and our value proposition, because employees are not customers. We can't treat employees the same way we would for employee experience, the EX to the CX, customer experience side. It's not apples to apples. But now we actually have a team that is monitoring, at least paying attention to what's happening out on Glassdoor, on Dice, on all of these different sites where, the consumerization that we're all experiencing of all of our experiences,
right.
It's like you rate everything from your Lyft driver to where you just ate last night to your company that you show up to every day. And so, we're paying attention. We're jumping into the dialogue. So, there have been a few times when there have been some really concerning comments. And so it's like we want to delve into, okay, so what's going on? What can we do about it? So it's listening first. That's a huge component. Right. Taking action. So, hey, if there's something we need to either go investigate or do, let's go do it. But also jumping into that dialogue. And so I've responded to a couple things online now too, where it's just sort of like, hey, that might be your experience, and sorry that if it is, but here's my experience. So, if it's a employee who either works here now or a former employee, it's not like we're going to figure out who said what. It's more just like, okay, how authentic does that feel for me? Is that the same thing, or is there a different perspective I can bring to that too? So there's a lot of complexity to it. There's not really a right or wrong thing to do or say, but I think what we are trying to do first and foremost is we're listening and we're paying attention, and we want to have that dialogue. And hey, I guess if we have to have it in a public forum, we'll do that too. But that's what we're trying to do internally too.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of nailed it, because that is the experience that people are having with everything that they're doing. So like you said, the Lyft, rating your Lyft driver, all that kind of stuff. And so as that becomes more normal, we're going to see that impact us greatly as well, with respect to that's where people are going to be going to find out about what the company's like. And there's a couple ways you can even go on Glassdoor and look up reviews. It's not only about the company, but it's also about that interview process and what to watch for and things like that. And so that's why it is so important for us to listen and pay attention, and then to engage with some of the comments, mostly the bad ones, but also the good ones too. Just say, hey, we're out here, we appreciate it, we appreciate the feedback, and
because that's where the research is going with all things employee experience too, is that's what we are going to compete on for talent. Like people, they're going to go check it out. They want to see what our CEO's rating is. Fortunately, ours is very high right now. And, it's about our ethics and integrity. It's about our culture. But people are really hungry to understand, okay, what's it like if I say yes to that job? So it's not just like, okay, that sounds really cool, and yeah, you've got really great people. A lot of companies try to say and do that, and that's kind of the employer brand side of things. But that experience that really shows through is what people are searching for, so that they know before saying yes to a company what they're signing on for.
So the two of you were just in Salt Lake City for an experience conference, really, called X4 Summit. I think it's hosted by Qualtrics, who was recently acquired by SAP. But I got to go last year as well. It's probably one of the best conferences I've ever been to. But can you guys talk a little bit about that? I'm just curious about what you learned. What was the theme this year? Who presented? Because obviously there was some awesome, I saw on Instagram a whole bunch of really cool keynotes. But yeah, can you guys, have you heard of that, Andrew, by the way, that conference?
No.
It's pretty sweet.
But
okay.
you've talked a lot of good things about it in preparation for today. I'm curious. What was it like?
It was awesome. You got to come next year.
Yeah, I would truly say someone or a group of people from Rockwell should go every year. And it applies to all different areas of concentration. You would take away, I would take away different, Tressa and Anthony and everyone. So I would truly, if you're interested, it was so valuable just getting exposure to what Qualtrics and SAP are doing together out there, and the messages that we need to be listening to from our employees, and how that connects directly to our customers and our Rockwell's profitability and success. It's just all connected, and I love that you said we need to be listening more and we're paying attention. That's the key. That's where it starts.
So 4X, what are the 4Xs? And then where do they take it?
So they talk about employee, customer, so all within the experience realm. So employee, customer, brand experience, so that'll even go into the product dimensions, and then they have just kind of an overall research arm for even educational. But what they do is they kind of bring it all in under the umbrella of experience. So one of the keynotes, it's a ridiculous lineup, but they had Sir Richard Branson, so as the CEO of Virgin, talking about just how he started his whole journey as kind of an entrepreneur, but really what it takes to have that level of brand success. And the theme of X4 this year was breakthrough. So it was all about breakthrough brands and people and ideas. And so it was just, and you can take that and apply it to pretty much just about anything you do. So as Sir Richard Branson is sitting on stage talking about his company, and as a CEO, the first thing he said is you have to take care of your employees. Because if they're not having a great experience, then my customers won't be either. They're the ones who hear from our customers first. So we need to tap into what that is, because they're going to see the trends. Our employees are going to see the trends before we do. And so, of course, hosted by this technology platform and this technology enabling company, of course, that's what they love to hear, because they're going to glean those insights and they're going to actually be able to demonstrate across each of these areas of practice the true relationship between when you do X, you will get Y as a result, whether that's across customer to employee to brand, and really those intersection points of, from a data mathematical perspective, pull this lever, here's your outcome. So it was fascinating to hear, but they had the CEO from JetBlue who was giving one of the breakouts, talking about employee and customer experience. I mean, it's just becoming so inextricably linked. You can't have one without the other,
So
or
true.
you can try, you're just not going to be as successful.
Yep, that was a very clear message, both from BuzzFeed and Patagonia. They are just on top of it, and like Tressa said, you truly cannot have one without the other. Another keynote was Oprah, and the reason why she took that keynote was because the theme of the event was breakthroughs. I mean, you can imagine all the kinds of inquiries that she gets to speak, and that was why she came there. And it was one thing that really stuck with me with Oprah's keynote was no matter who she has on her show, she's had Barack Obama, she's had, whoever, they all ask the same thing after, and it was, how was that? Was that good for you? And what they're really saying is, did you hear me? Did what I want to say get across to you? And so I just found that to be so interesting. As we think about our employees, we really need to listen and hear what they have to say. So.
What's interesting, the companies or groups you just mentioned all have world-renowned brands, right? Oprah, JetBlue, Patagonia. How do they balance a focus on brand and obviously product with employees and thus customers?
I think a lot of it comes down to really being authentic to who you are. And so, when I even think about our company and how we talk about we want to be a place where people can and want to do their best work, we've started saying that. We've meant it, but how does that become more and more true when we get new employees who might not think the same as we've always done things, or want to introduce new ideas, or really sponsoring innovation, which is going to be pretty painful for a lot of the really traditional ways we've done things? That it's, how can we be authentic to that statement of purpose we've already put out there? Because each of those brands, they hire for people who are like Patagonia. Like they close down their headquarters every other Friday so that people can be with their families and go surfing.
It's unbelievable. They truly, they won't hire someone unless they already are living and breathing Patagonia's mantras.
Wow.
It's incredible. And yeah, the flexibility that they have in their organization, it's truly employee first, and they just know that that's going to carry through to everything else. Like Tressa said, it's all connected.
Let's talk about those connections then too, because obviously a big portion of that that conference is about also the customer experience. And so I know that you work in a space where customer experience is sort of at the forefront. Can one of you guys describe what customer experience is? And then from, obviously even when I was out at that conference, they spoke about the correlation between employee experience, and you've kind of just given some examples of that connection. But what is that connection, and how has it influenced that sort of thing? So let's start out with, what is customer experience?
Andrew, you want to talk about that one?
Well, I would definitely not call myself an expert, but you hear the quote, your competition is your customer's last great experience,
Yep.
right? And I think more and more that's true. We're competing with their last great experience, not just with our competitors, our traditional competitors like Siemens or Emerson or ABB. We're competing with their experience at Amazon, at JetBlue, right, at Patagonia. Our customers want to feel a connection to our brand, the value we promise we're going to deliver them. And so I think customer experience is changing. But at the end of the day, I think for us it has a lot to do with the value we deliver them and making them a more competitive company, enabling their people to do more creative, thought-provoking work to make their companies more productive. But delivering on that promise is really tough. And then getting a network of 22,000 people plus the maybe 100,000 people in our partner network to live that promise out every day is pretty challenging. But I think that's where we're going for us with customer experience.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's also competing with the other experiences they have. And more it's a consumer-based experience that we're competing with.
Yeah, and I think it's also just being really conscious and cognizant of that, because it's, it is shifting so quickly that we have to be that much more responsive to what these trends are and what people are truly thinking, even unconsciously. They're comparing that Amazon experience to, being on a phone call and being like on hold for a number of minutes before their call is answered, versus why can't I just go online and get something resolved quickly? I mean, it's what are those things that that even subconsciously you might not have expected from us as a company a couple of years ago, but now this is how it's going to need to be done. And so between customer experience and from the employee experience, it's those same kind of touch points where it's just, you can't make the same assumptions of what worked yesterday is going to work now, because people, attention spans are, much, much shorter. The expectation of immediacy and what that even looks like and how you define that is so different now. It's just, I think part of it is just, we're kind of coming to this point where even our customers and even our employees can't articulate what it is or what great looks like, but we have to help be really intentional about how we can at least try and reshape things and listen and do something about it, versus just, well, hey, we spent 18 months getting prepared to launch this, and here's a wonderful new program. Don't you love it? And it's like, well, how can you be agile and adaptive enough that if this isn't the perfect thing, or if it would have been 18 months ago, like, what does that look like now? And how do we actually solicit the input and the feedback to get at what people really would find valuable versus, do you like it and would you recommend it? There's so many more experiential aspects to what people are exposed to that just becomes part of, is it easy for me, and did it make me feel good, and would I recommend it? There are so many other touch points that go into it now too.
What do our leaders think that we're doing well relative to employee experience, and then what are they worried about? Like, what keeps them up at night relative to that?
Well, I hesitate to speak for all leaders, but I think that some of the things that they recognize, and I tend to see, and you hear a lot when you talk to people, is just they're really starting to understand and feel and know how our culture really differentiates us, and so how important that can be, whether that's our culture of integrity and our culture of ethics, and we put a lot of time and effort into that. Our culture of inclusion, and just what does that look like and what can that mean? So I think there are people who are really proud of that, but we're also at a point where we're kind of like not quite sure what to do next, and that's not a comfortable place for leaders to be in, because people are looking up at them of like, all right, what's next? What are we going to do next? And the sands are shifting beneath our feet, so we're trying to get to that next thing of, okay, what do we do? But I think there's a recognition that there's so much goodness, and how can we protect that and use that and shape that and grow that, but also get to that next thing too. So I think there's just some uncertainty, but there's an appetite for, okay, but we have to do more, and they're definitely, I think, hearing it from the organization through Global Voices, through conversations, through a lot of different means.
Tressa, you described employee experience earlier as in some ways being kind of discrete touch points that employees have, like whether they're being hired or terminated or developed through the company. Some of those you can curate in a really clear way.
Yep.
Some of them are derivative of their engagements with employees, their manager, and that's based on the culture that we promise and try to live out.
Yep.
How does employee experience and culture interact, and then what do we do to drive more intentional culture to align with that employee experience?
I think that's a great and probably billion-dollar question now, not even $1 million question. I think that's something that a lot of companies are really trying to figure out, and they're spending the time, and they're trying to get the technology, and they're trying to get that feedback at those different touch points, so that, yes, you can curate those very specific experiences of what's it like to go through a recruitment process, to an onboarding process, to kind of your productivity process of becoming productive in your job, and your relationship with your manager and with your teammates, and what that looks like. So I think there is that recognition of, okay, there needs to be something not necessarily off the shelf, but curated to a point where people can experience something hopefully in a relatively similar way that'll align to our brand and who we want to be. But there's a lot that just happens through those, micro, interactions that you have too. So, I've thought about it I would say that even for the last number of years working on things like Global Voices and engagement, I really contend that there's kind of those three levels of, there's a lot we have to do as a company that we need to offer through those tools and programs and processes. And that's really important. And that is one of the pillars of how we can help to establish and shape our culture is through kind of that company level. But then it really comes to leaders and managers, and how are they leading in those moments, even the tough moments? How are they living out our values? How are they being overtly demonstrative of, yep, this is who we are? And that could be in a team meeting, or that could be rethinking a team meeting, so that you're actually thinking about experience. Is your team, are they sitting there just like bored out of their minds for 90 minutes? Or, what would make them more productive? What can make them more engaged even in that? And, so our leaders and managers, in addition to kind of the company tools and processes, our leaders and managers, they can have a really impactful role to that culture and to those experiences. But then the third level is each of us as employees ourselves. I might be in a leadership level at this company, but I'm an employee first and foremost. So what can I do for my own engagement, but what can I do to help sponsor not just my team's engagement and my team's experience, but as I'm interacting with other people around the company, am I leaving that email unanswered for 2 days, or am I getting back to somebody with a warm handoff to the next person who can help? So it's like, I think there are these different pillars that kind of all go into what shapes our culture on, anywhere we are. And that, it's not just at headquarters, it's that can be anywhere. We might have an office of 5 people around the world. It's like, we have to have the systems, tools, and processes. We have to have the leaders helping to guide the way, but we can each do something too.
Mm-hmm.
That felt like $1 billion answer.
Yeah, that was great. I really like that 3 pillars, and I've been thinking about that as a manager too. What can I be doing? And I would love coaching and direction on a holistic level from the organization of, hey, here's what I should be doing every week with my team, every month, every quarter, or whatever it is. And I've internally developed those things for myself. Like, here's what I would like as an employee, or what I've noticed work well in other instances and work not so well. And one of the things I thought about was, and I'm sure we can all really relate to this, is there's so many meetings, right? And a lot of them are great, but some of them can be a little bit better. And so I thought about every Wednesday afternoon taking a sabbatical. The whole team, you're not allowed to take a meeting from 12 to 4. That's your study hall. Like, you're going to get stuff done. You can meet with our team collectively, like we can do that, but no one else. And you're just, you're going to drive and just get things done for yourself. Because I hear that from my team is, can't have another meeting. And so what could I be doing as a manager to change that?
Well, I love that. And I think it's being empowered as a manager to make those decisions first. Absolutely.
Right.
To try and experiment with what that could look like for your team and how that could maybe influence those around you. Because, I think that, and we're hungry for those kind of opportunities and the things that are working that we can share across the company too, because it's like, that there are so many little nuggets of things that are going right, and that managers or leaders or individual contributors are doing, where it's like, oh my gosh, if we could just grab that and take that and do more of that, that would help.
Right.
It might not make it perfect, but hey, let's any kind of progress would be great. So I think finding those things
exactly.
too.
And I think the experimentation is really cool. I think the biggest thing too as a manager, and I've had a lot of these conversations with my team as well, around just empowering them to know that they own their time. And so you don't have to take every meeting.
Right.
You could ask to reschedule. A lot of times there's meetings that get scheduled like same day. Tell them, I'm sorry, I can't do that. So anyway, I think as the manager, I think it is important to sort of support them and say, hey, you own your time.
Right.
Use it wisely, and
empowering them in different ways for them to make their own decisions and realize that they've got a seat at the table. I want to be challenged. I want them to ask why, and could we do it this way, or could we do this differently? And I love hearing that. I think that's great.
So Tressa, segue into I'd like to talk a little bit about what your team is doing. I actually know what the team is doing, so I'm not going to lie to the audience watching this. But if you could just talk a little bit about maybe what your priorities are around employee experience, and maybe what the team's working on, because there's a lot of cool stuff your team is doing. So if you could just speak to some of that stuff. You mentioned Global Voices.
What
is Global Voices, by the way?
Global Voices. That is the opportunity for our 23,000 some employees, plus all of our contractors around the world, to really make their voice heard. It's through our annual employee engagement survey that we deploy as of January. So you should be already hopefully talking to your managers and your teams about action plans and kind of what's the one thing that you could do as a team to simplify or to, really drive change, that it doesn't have to come from that company level. It could actually come from your team level or an individual level, as we're doing that as a company too. But I think just across our employee communications and like our mass communications channels, one of the things that we've been striving to do in our strategy is be audience first. We've been trying to do that for many years now. We've been going through omni-channel. So we recognize that not everybody wants to sit through a 60 or 90-minute leadership meeting. So here's the 2-minute read summary following that. Here are the articles on Epoch that are partly user-generated and driven through people's feedback. So we're really proud to have launched Epoch just a year ago. Seeing great strides in that.
For those that don't know, Epoch is our digital workplace. Well, I'd hope you know what that is, but it's our digital workplace where you can access all the tools, resources, and information you need about the company. So.
Right. And that's really brought Yammer front and center and as a social channel so people can connect, and also have kind of the platform where we can actually see and connect through, you can search org charts, you can find employees around the world. So even though the platform replaced an 18-year-old system that was like, we were MacGyvering that, like for sure. It was like strings, Band-Aids, and paper clips holding that together. So thanks to the IT organization and the team to like make that last to its very dying breath. But now we're at a point where it's like, we had to launch something that wasn't perfect. We've continued to get a lot of feedback along the way, but it's like we had to do something. So with that, we're learning a lot. We're introducing new channels. We've got manager channels to get information into the hands of our people managers around the company, working with our leadership teams. And so it's that multi-tiered approach, but it's also, we don't want to treat people as if they are a singular employee. We realize people have preferences, and some people are going to love Yammer, some people hate Yammer. Mm-hmm. We hear it all, and that's okay.
Right.
So, but it's also kind of being comfortable with it. We're just going to need to figure this out and adapt as we go along too. So that's what keeps my job fun.
Yeah, for sure. So then in addition to your team, what is happening more broadly across the company? There's a lot going on, so obviously we don't have time to cover that, but you had mentioned Global Voices. There's clearly a Global Voices Council if you want to talk to that, but then also, I know that there's a talent effectiveness team that is highly focused on training and developing managers, which you said was a really critical component, that $1 billion question. So can you speak to a little bit about what the company's doing?
Yeah, so I think that there's absolutely that recognition that this is about our people, and so with that we need to continue to build out some of the teams and make those investments to help the training and the development, and that historically has been pretty cyclical along with our very cyclical business. So how is it that we can better use technology and tools to bring that to more people and make that a very intentional part of that employee life cycle? So the talent effectiveness team has rolled out things like the managerial leadership practices, really trying to make it just more clear for managers across the organization, kind of what is your role, just because you might have already been in a people management role for a while, but you might have had to kind of cobble it together and figure it out yourself and through your own network, versus actually providing some guidance and tools and resources. So we're at that point where these broader teams are able to create those resources and offer those up, and so we're at the kind of beginning cusp of some of that, and through Global Voices we continue to get that feedback, and that actually helps to reinforce and sort of perpetuate, like, yes, we need to invest in this leadership, so let's offer more of this. And here's where we get that feedback of the teams who have kind of turned things around even over from Global Voices 2018 to 19, like what changed, what's enhanced, how, what does that look like, and what could we do more of to help people. So
MLP was awesome, by the way.
Sweet.
I think the coolest thing about that practice you launched was not only the training, but it was the first time I had seen a managerial self-assessment so that you could drive intentional development as a manager, like with you and the person you report to. Whereas previously it felt like we had done a lot to enable employees generically to develop, but to have intentional management development assessments and then competency development, it was really big.
And that's kudos to Stacey Waltz and her team, because they have really thoughtfully brought that together with the things like leading for results. And there's some new leadership training kind of in the pipeline that's still coming out, and Accelerate program that can really kind of bridge that entire managerial experience too, so that it's not just one more program thrown out into this Rockwell universe, but it's actually part of a holistic plan to really intentionally build managers, their capability, and really help to put that thought and intention into it from that manager's perspective too. So it's not like, okay, here's your latest module, go spoon feed and check, you've taken something. It's to how do you really, back to that experience word, how are you experiencing that, how you're trying that out, and learning it for yourself, because that's the way it's really going to take hold and be most effective for your team too.
And how do you mentioned how the MLP program is really great, and not every manager is going to be as proactive as you or others in the organization. And how do you inspire those that are kind of apathetic to get on board? What's the organization thinking about from that perspective? And not just managers, but also employees. There's going to be employees who don't really want to be connected or engaged, and is that okay? And we just kind of let them do their thing? Or how do we feel about the different types of engagement, interest?
I feel like I'm skating on a little thinner ice here. But I mean, I'll answer that from my perspective, not from a company perspective. So personally, I would want to find what's that thing that will inspire somebody, and it might not be on my team, and it might not be in our company. Right. And I'm going to need to be okay with that. And the truth of the matter is we actually have really low turnover as a company. We have a really high retention rate. And sometimes when we see people leaving the company or reading those, exit interviews on Glassdoor, we might have this perception that we have more turnover than we do, and we don't. In most of the areas of our business, we are almost half, as like our competitors. Like they have a 2x turnover to what we do.
That's great.
In some cases, when we get those really inspired, engaged, excited people. But I think part of the secret is to continue to learn in your job. Even if you found your niche and you are in your wheelhouse, I'm in my lane, I'm loving what I'm doing, I would be bored if I just stopped today. There's so many things that are changing that you're doing yourself a disservice if you're not continually learning and finding out new ideas and bringing those to your job. And to me, that's part of what I love about this company is we allow for so much of that. But if you or a manager or somebody just kind of stops and starts to stagnate, your performance is going to suffer. So even,
Right.
at some point, that's going to kind of backfire on you too. So even if you find the thing you love, just keep learning at it, because it's going to keep changing, and be open to what that is. You don't have to aspire to X level of the company or X title. Personally, I've never done that. I'd never know what I'm doing next, but I just find the next thing that inspires me and I get excited about, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in a new place, and it's just
right. Yeah, that's great.
So, but I think it's hard, but it's also hard too. When you find yourself kind of getting into those patterns and into those behaviors, and you kind of find yourself in a rut, it's hard to get out. And I think that's the time when you should go to. It doesn't even have to be your manager. It could be somebody who you really trust in your network of okay, what can you do next, and how do you have a conversation with your manager? Because hopefully through MLP and through other programs, our managers are going to be more open to those conversations too. You don't have to find this little cookie cutter role and stick to it for the next 20 years.
Right.
So actually, go ahead.
Tressa, to that end, where do you see your organization's work going in the future? It may be early to ask that question, and how do you imagine customer experience weaving into it?
Well, honestly, this whole all things employee experience, it wasn't even on the radar 2 years ago. It's so that is the big new frontier, at least for me and for my team. And I don't know yet what that looks like. And part of that is exciting, and part of that is scary as hell. I mean, how do you write a proposal to the leadership team to get some resources and funding to the thing you don't know yet? Well, I'm figuring it out. So we're gonna, but I'm also partnering with people like Beth Parkinson, who's doing some of the same stuff on the customer experience side and gleaning customer insights, and working with like Kyle Crum from the
Advanced Tech?
strategic development team, and from a bunch of his colleagues, and people in the CSM business, and people who are already using different ways to glean some of that CX data. And so we're talking about, well, you can't separate the CX from the EX, so it's like there's something to this. We don't know what it is yet, and that's kind of exciting right now. So.
That beats the heck out of iterating on things we've done in the past.
Oh my gosh, you would have to shoot me. Like, I could not, like, God love our black belt teams and our like Lean Six. Like, we have to find those things to like go optimize and iterate on, but that's not the job for me. And I know enough about myself to know that. So.
Some serious self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Well, cool. So before we wrap up, because we are going to have to wrap up soon here, there's a question I like to end with. So we are going to have to move into that question. But I would like to ask all of you that question. But we'll start out with you, Tressa. Is what book or podcast, people seem to love this question. This is why I like to ask it. But what book or podcast would you recommend? What are you like reading right now or listening to right now that you might recommend to someone?
Well, the last book I read was an easy like pickup, and was Abby Wambach, her book called Wolfpack. You can finish that book in 45 minutes to an hour. There's like 8 life lessons, nuggets, but it's really about women supporting women. And so Abby Wambach she's actually the leading scorer of all men's and women's soccer teams.
Wow.
Across everything professional. So she's got a little credibility on the whole, athletic front, the leadership front, and I'm actually encouraging my boys to read it too. So it's not just for women, but she shares stories of what it was like being on the U.S. World Cup winning team to what it was like being on the Olympic team, but just kind of that leadership mentality and the learnings. So highly recommend that.
All right. Who wants to go next?
I read a book, You're a Badass, and basically how to live your best life. It was such a great book and all about the energy and the effort that you put into your days, your weeks, everything, and how it'll come back to you. And so it was a really great story about, how you should be, how you can live your best, and just how it's just all connected. It was a really great book.
Very cool.
Yeah.
What about you, Andrew?
I just finished Culture Code, but if I were to hype
book.
a book, it would be Drive by Dan Pink, which I reread recently.
Okay.
So he did a bunch of research and found the way companies have driven employees for so long has been based on rewards or the threat of punishment for breaking a rule. And all of his research finds it's the worst way to motivate people, especially if they're doing creative, heuristic work. But the rest of his book is dedicated to the research that says a sense of purpose, a sense of autonomy, and a sense of mastery in a results-oriented work environment is what really drives humans to do the type of work we do at Rockwell. And it's a book I wish every manager in the company would read. It would just, I think, change our culture in such a cool way in a short amount of time. Drive by Dan Pink.
Yeah, I've heard of it. Cool. I'll have to check it out. So for me, a podcast I just recently started actually last week was called The Business of Hype. It's actually really cool. So the first episode I listened to, I interviewed Jaden Smith. So everyone knows his father, I would think, Will Smith. But Jaden Smith has kind of been successful doing his own thing. What I loved about that episode, it was really about creativity, and he really goes on to talk about not conforming and being who he is, and the importance of doing that so that your craft is always on point. So I thought that was cool. But the latest episode I just listened to was with someone by the name of Mickey, I think it's Aguali. I don't know. Have you guys ever heard of her? Okay, so she's a serial entrepreneur. She's got a very interesting set of categories. But she was just really cool because very similar to Jaden Smith, it was really around sort of not conforming and finding her way through, some very, especially, we know with some of the inclusion efforts, being a woman entrepreneur, seeking money and that sort of stuff. And so being in a room full of men asking for that money, and how she kind of talks about how some of the creative ways that she went and pitched and got the money, and now she's a successful entrepreneur. So anyway, Business of Hype, pretty cool. I recommend it. So. with that, thank you, Tressa, for your time. I think we could, talk about this all day with you, and it'd be a fun
Thank you all.
conversation.
And I would love to
was
talk
great.
about it anytime with anybody. So
Yeah. All right. Well, there you guys have it. She'll reach out to her and bring up the topic and
ping me on Yammer.
Yeah, exactly.
Or an email or a short meeting.
Yeah. So thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Sabrina. Thank you, Andrew, for your time as well.